I wanted to do a video about talking about where I grew up. People who listen to me know that I've referenced New York City many times in a wistful kind of, longing way, and also somewhat agitated at what it's become, and lamenting that. But I still have sentimental feelings about it, and so I just thought I'd do a video about that. I'm talking into the microphone from the side, so hopefully it sounds relatively normal. This is an SM58 mic. This is the way that I have to do the video, and I don't have a pause button. Do I? Okay, whatever. I started the video. I'm going to keep going. If I pause like egregiously or something, I'm going to edit it out because I don't like to have a lot of pause in the video, because anyway, people might be just listening to it anyway, although with this type of video, it's kind of like that's really going against the point of the video, because like you're not going to be looking at what I'm talking about. So anyway, yeah, if I had a whole bunch of subscribers, did I say this already? I don't think I'd do this video, but seeing as I only have 9, I'm going to do it, and it really doesn't matter anyway, because this was so long ago now. It feels like yesterday to me, but it was a very long time ago. And I'm going to talk a little bit about like what changed since I was a kid in the neighborhood, if you want to call it that. I mean, do they really have neighborhoods in the city? But anyway, and so yeah, it's technically called Lenox Hill. I think it's the richest neighborhood in the city. That's the last time I checked, but things like that change. And I would think somewhere in the west, what do you call it? Like up the Upper West Side, I would think would have more a concentration of wealth, but I'm not sure about that. So I have this set on so like it's recording the whole screen in 4K or 5K, whatever the resolution is of the screen, but it's going to be output in 1080p because I don't think it needs to be output in 4K, it's going to be pointless. Anyway, so right here. And they've changed this little thing down here, this little figure, and I have a feeling it's for the the Pride Month. Well, I don't even know what it is. I can't, it doesn't look gay. I don't know what it is, but that's not the normal figure. So anyway, Street View. So I'm going to go into Street View. So I grew up in this building. It's a little bit understated looking. It kind of doesn't really look that great. It has that kind of, it was built right around 1960, has a little bit of like a gray, plain, kind of industrial vibe. But it was not like that inside. And so you can, why do they have to put that sign there? No one knew that was a condominium before you put that sign there. Anyway, yeah. So it's very. But I'm gonna. So like you go up. It looks like it only has like I don't know what 12 floors or something. It's actually a 20-story building, I think, or 19 or 20. It's very similar to this building right here, where what happens is it's vaguely sort of pyramidal type of structure where it gets narrower towards the top, because those are the luxury apartments where you have like a terrace. Somebody has the fancy apartment, if you want to call it that, whatever. But they're probably the more expensive apartments, and then it has like a terrace that you can go out on. The apartment that I lived in had 2 of them. So, I don't even know how my dad really afforded that, to be honest. But he did work hard, and he was very prominent in his field. So you can, and now you can see that it goes up higher than that, and certain areas of the building have like a terrace or whatever. It was a very nice apartment, and I didn't really realize as I was growing up that it was sort of like a luxury apartment. It didn't look like that, but that's basically what it was, because it didn't look like that because there were 3 kids growing up there, and 4 kids depending on the time. But usually it was me and my brother and my sister, and my other sister had already moved out. She was kind of kicked out in a way, and this apartment building has a garage. It's completely gouges you. Even back in the 90s, that's just the way it works. I don't, rich people have, and I'm saying rich people like it, but I grew up there, but it's different now. And so, like, I don't know how people have like various tricks and like tax write-offs and stuff like that. So when you think about an apartment in New York City, and then you're thinking about what the rent for a place like this would be on 63rd between 3rd and Lex, and then it's like $5,000 a month or whatever, and you're thinking like, well, or maybe even higher. I don't really know. And then on top of that, you're talking about if you have a car, how much is that a month? We kept it there. That was our garage. So I don't really know. But the point is, it's very expensive. So you think like, well, how the fuck can anyone afford to live in the city? Well, it's partly because of the wealth disparity, and it's also partly just because, people have, when you get rich enough, you have like these tricks, and like, you have tax write-offs and stuff like that, or you're, one hand washes the other, or whatever the expression is. Like, you have what's it called? A quid pro quo with someone, or you're getting various breaks on things. It's very it's important to a lot of people that have a lot of money to look like they're even richer than they are, but then they end up getting breaks on certain things, and that's partly why they're able to survive. For us, I don't think we had any break, except for the fact that if you're using the garage, this is so boring. But anyway, I'm going to make this anyway. But like, if you're using a garage like that, and you've had it contracted or whatever to use it year round, you must get some kind of a break, So anyway, this is a neighborhood it's kind of similar to where we ended up having a place in Long Island, in the sense that it's very Jewish. And you might say, well, it's New York City, bro. Okay, but the neighborhood itself is pretty Jewish. And what else was I going to say about it? Yeah, it's not, there's nothing bohemian about this neighborhood. It's kind of boring looking, even you can see. It's just kind of boring looking. So when I grew up, this train station, the subway, was not there. So I'm glad I didn't live there when they were building that. This area here, that used to be this store called the Bombay Company, and it would sell things that, little like knickknacks and shit, and furniture and stuff that looked kind of like a little bit fancier than it really was, but it was expensive, and now it's for lease. So then across the street, like, when I was growing up, like when I was around 11, 12, that's when they started building this building. And at the time, everyone in my family was kind of like, no one liked it. And to be honest, it obstructed our view, and that was part of the problem. And, that's just a thing that happens in New York City. But honestly, I do think it's just not a very pretty building. Honestly, even compared to the one that I grew up in, because this is sort of like boring, like some kind of style that was like popular in the late 50s, I guess. But it's kind of flat. But then you look at this one and it's like, what is it? Brown? Is it beige? What are we doing? And then it also has an industrial look as well. It looks kind of like, almost like if a college dorm were like an apartment building or something. But anyway, so yeah, they built that. And see, by the way, I'm using Google Street View. I downloaded Google Earth, and it was so slow that I thought this was going to be faster because it's like a program on your computer. This is faster, so I'm using this instead. This, what they call Morton Williams, used to be a food emporium, but I've never been to Morton Williams. I don't think I had heard of it before I started looking at this shit. So now it's a Morton Williams. Okay, I don't know. Was it like a gourmet, upscale, a grocery store? So like I said, it used to be the Food Emporium. The Food Emporium, that's a really boring sounding name, and it kind of sounds like it would be some sort of low cost type of place, but it wasn't. It was sort of upscale, but nothing like pretentiously upscale or anything, but it wasn't like a regular Gristedes or whatever. And anyone listening who didn't grow up in New York might not know what I'm talking about, but I think Gristedes was like, and D'Agostino, those were places that were around in the city. So yeah, this is where I grew up, and this is the neighborhood that I was familiar with. I'm not going to say where I went to school, but it was very near here. And again, this is the problem with Google Street View. It's kind of like skipping stuff. Oh no, it didn't. I felt like it did. But so yeah, that was a nice street, and I really loved growing up in the city. I felt very fortunate. I knew I even at the time, even though I was a kid, I knew I was lucky, or I felt that I was. That Starbucks, because apparently we need to have a Starbucks everywhere on every other block. Okay, I guess. That used to be a Foot Locker. That's not really. I think that's what it was. So this corner here, that whatever this structure is right here, where all the, scaffolding, all that scaffolding is. Oh, it still is. Oh, okay. It says Equinox. It used to be, I think, a different health club, but so now it's an Equinox. Then this thing here used to be called. Is this? I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. Oh, this, okay. With the kind of fancy awning. This used to be a hotel for, I think, only for women, and it was called the Barbizon. And we knew someone who lived there, and oh man, she was just so checked out. And she was old when I was a kid. And it's nothing about age, but I just remember her being a very sort of like old money, but also just kind of like checked out or something. Like, it's almost like she didn't quite live in reality or something, but it used to be called the Barbizon Hotel. I think, I don't know what it is now, and the other place where I grew up had a sign that said condominium, but ironically, I don't know what this is, and it doesn't have a sign. So that these okay, so these cars are kind of obstructing the view. So when I was doing this, when I first started looking at this, I was like, oh good, they still have the Ray's Pizza there where we used to get pizza, and it was quite good in my opinion. I'm not a gourmet, like I don't know, I'm not a food expert. I don't know what's necessarily the best pizza. I do know that when people say certain pizza is really good, I think that they're saying like what they think they're supposed to say. Like, so John's Pizzeria down in the Village, like that's supposed to be like the best pizza, and I've tried it and I'm just like, okay, I guess, like it's kind of dry, like it's, I think it's supposed to be more authentic or something because it has less cheese, but all that means to me is that it's like squares or whatever, and it's just kind of like crunchy or something, and that's not the type of pizza that I like. So anyway, yeah, we ordered pizza from there relatively often, and back then there wasn't like DoorDash and whatever. I don't really even know what they do today. Like, in other words, what I'm saying is like, so if you order Chinese, like, and you get it delivered, does that have to be through DoorDash? See, this tells you how often I literally eat out, go to any kind of restaurant, or order any food. because I don't have the money. So this is the place that my mom used to call the Korean deli, because you remember the movie Falling Down, and as far as I remember, the guy who owned the deli where he starts, like, I think, taking a baseball bat to the aisles, the Michael Douglas character, or Kirk, no, Michael Douglas. That I think that guy was Korean, and the people who owned this place were Korean, and this was just a nice little place that you could go and get random shit. And I remember I used to go in here with my first girlfriend and stuff. I mean, not to like do something, not to eat there, but just like to pick something up. And I remember they used to sell something called Royal Jelly, and it was like a gimmicky thing, but it was like an Asian thing, right? And I don't know what they do in like Japan or Korea or whatever, but it was advertised as being some sort of like, it's gonna make you strong, and it's gonna give you almost like superpowers or something. So once in a while my mom would buy those for me because she knew that I liked, somehow thinking I was imbibing some sort of magical substance, which is kind of how they advertised it in a way. But I remember one funny memory. It's not going to sound that funny, but it was funny to me. One time I was in there and I was looking at the drinks, and I have this habit of like not picking things very quickly because I get overwhelmed, and I'm like, damn, like they have everything here. Like, I don't know what to get. But so these two black girls were standing there, and I was sort of standing back because I was like, oh, well, they know what they want, so I'm not going to like stand here in their way. And then one of them saw that the drink, and this was in the 90s, remember? So I think one of the 16 ounce bottle thing of Coke or something she picked it up very casually, and she said, oh, 175? And then she said, they played theyself, like in reference to that was so expensive, and then she put it back. And I was sort of trying to repress laughter because I didn't really want to engage with them. Like, I was just sort of observing it. But anyway, and yeah, that must have been, I don't know, 1998, something like that. A lot of these places, I don't even remember if they were originally there. I don't think this was. I don't think that was. But yeah, so another thing that's still there and has been for 30 plus years, maybe longer, is this place called Smiley's. Just a standard sort of deli, oops. Where was I? Yeah, okay, so Smiley's, and there's a rather redheaded looking person. Oh, it's a Japanese guy. He bleached his hair, I think. So yeah, that was just a place that I knew growing up, and so this place used to be called Burger Heaven. Now, when I read the book Breakfast at Tiffany's, I started having. After I finished it, I was deeply depressed, and it was because of how badly I missed living in the city. And it's partly because first of all, I don't know where Tiffany is, the store, if it's even there anymore. I don't know where Tiffany is, but it must be in this general Upper East Side, kind of midtownish area, because Truman Capote had references to places, but he was avoiding copyright, I think. So he had a reference to, in the book, he called it Hamburg Heaven. In real life, it was called Burger Heaven, and it was this place. And so that's a place that my dad used to. I grew up going to this place, and like, as a treat, or however you want to say it, just a place to take me, like when I didn't have school or maybe like after school or something like that. My dad or my mom or both would take me here, and it's just one of those childhood memories that it's just a nice memory. But certain things can't last forever, and so obviously but I'm glad they replaced it with another restaurant. And the reason I'm glad of that is like because they do all this shit in the city and like other places too, where it's like they just tear down everything that's there, and then you have a perfectly, like, you have the infrastructure or the utilities inside or whatever to have a restaurant, but they change it all and they tear everything down and then they turn it into some useless like fashion boutique or something. So I'm very glad that it turned into another restaurant. It's probably pretty similar inside to what it used to be. This place has been there forever too. I was surprised that it was still there. Pastor Pharmacy. There's a few of them in the city. And by the way, I sort of misspoke in a way because like I said that the Tiffany store must be in this area. I think there wasn't just one hamburger heaven or burger heaven, sorry. There wasn't just one burger heaven. There were like 2 or 3 of them, and there was another one sort of on the more upper east side. So I think that's what he was talking about. And another place that, I don't know, I'm just going to type it in right now. What am I thinking of? Another place that he referenced in the book was this place where after my dad died and then my brother died, about 6 months later, this was the funeral home where they were put. It's considered some kind of upscale, I don't know, like if you're rich and you want to have a wake or whatever it's called, a showing, you do it here, I guess. I don't know. I just happen to know that about that place. So, again, I don't think we paid for that because after my dad died, it was just so abundantly clear that we didn't have money. And, so I don't think we paid for that. And the last memory I have of my brother is seeing his decaying body on like a bed that they had, in this place. And it was very strange to see, very morbid. And I think that they didn't mean to have him there like that because his body was already starting to sort of decay, and he looked like a cadaver, and that, so that was fun. So yeah, but anyway, I'm gonna try to go back to where I was. Fuck. It's okay. So that didn't work. Whatever. But I'm gonna show where I saw So Freddie Mercury. I think I've said this before. It's not really that interesting of a story, but it was meaningful in my life anyway. Whatever. I'm trying to. I don't know if I can find it. Some people that we were very close to, as I said, we called him Uncle, lived in this building at trying to figure out how to say this, very high up in the building. And Freddie Mercury had a pied-à-terre. That's what they call it. I learned this recently. My sister was explaining to me what a pied-à-terre is. It basically means an apartment where you just kind of hang out. Like, it's not your main residence. And I think they use it in the context of like, oh, this person is rich. They have like some mansion or something, and that's where they normally live. But, they have this other place. It's called it's their pied-à-terre, So, but what happened was that I was, we were very good friends with these people that lived in the penthouse of this place. And the day after Freddie Mercury died, he wasn't here because, like I said, it was his pied a terre. It was his not temporary, but it was his place where he would like relax if he were in the area of New York City, I guess, whatever. They told us, oh, he was our neighbor, and this guy's wife was kind of like a nosy person, and apparently Freddie Mercury just left his apartment open. Like he left other certain things maybe a little bit too open. And I say that jokingly, but I think there's a certain type of personality, I guess, I don't know, but like, so the point is like, he wouldn't lock his door, I think it was partly just like, he implicitly trusted them, and he didn't feel like there was a need to lock his door, apparently. So, the day after he died, they knew that I was a fan of Queen. Even though I was 12, that's just when I was starting to get into music. And so she tried opening his front door, and he just, so he was obviously he was not there when he was dying, but I went in there, and it was a very sad vibe, very bachelor pad type of place, and I could tell that he didn't live there, but I could also tell that he did live there. In other words, huge grand piano in the living room. And by the way, I entered the place and I thought, oh, this is funny, it's not really like that big of an apartment. But that goes to show you like that I didn't really understand the scale of a lot of people's apartments. I didn't really understand that our apartment was really pretty big. But his apartment was kind of like the same kind of size. And so, to my memory, the way and by the way, there's a layout of it, strangely enough, on the internet. Freddie Mercury's apartment, the layout, But I remember walking in and seeing basically like a kitchen to my left. But I think, I don't know if I'm remembering quite correctly, but I do remember also that I walked into his bedroom, and I just thought, I don't know, like I feel weird, like I shouldn't really be looking at this, And I also remember thinking, like, I wonder if that's the bed where he got AIDS. And, that's a weird thing to think, but it's just like something that even at that age, I knew what he died of, or whatever, HIV, whatever, however you want to say it. So, and I remember that this is all covered, everything's covered up in scaffolding. Do we need this? Is this like a COVID thing? I don't know, whatever. But so I'm almost, because I can't quite tell, but I'm almost positive this is the building. So, he had a great view. But anyway, so I went into his bedroom, and then at some point I looked at, I think, in his closet. And this is another way that I knew it was Freddie Mercury. He had a full closet. It didn't have it wasn't quite full, but like it was obvious that he had a lot of stuff in there. And he had multiple pairs of those Puma or Adidas, whatever they were. I think they were Puma. Those sneakers that he always wore in the 80s when he was performing. That's what he was into, that's what worked for him. And there were multiple pairs of them in the closet, and my mom said, why don't you take a pair of them? And I just felt, and I still feel, I have a boss who's very into keeping. My boss has a copy of The Catcher in the Rye that a policeman, this is a weird thing to do in my opinion, but he has a copy of The Catcher in the Rye that when John Lennon was shot, and like that guy, whatever his name is, who shot John Lennon, had a copy of The Catcher in the Rye on him when he did that. Apparently, a policeman shortly after bought a copy of Catcher in the Rye and had Mark David Chapman sign the copy. Like, I think the way my boss describes it, like kind of like on the scene. So my boss likes to have stuff like that. He likes to collect things like that. And I don't think that's something I would do. I'm not saying it's wrong, but the point is, like, when I was up there, and by the way, I don't know what that book is worth, but I think it's worth 500, 1,000, I don't know, something like that. But so, my mom encouraged me, and she knew that this was something that I was going to remember my whole life. And it doesn't even matter whatever I ended up doing. Even if I had had some sort of successful, rich life later on, which, as of right now, 8:24 p.m., June 13th, I don't. But even in 2026, but even if I did end up having some sort of successful life, that I would always remember that. And she told me, why don't you take one of those, a pair of those shoes? And I just didn't feel that it was right. And I felt like that's, his stuff, even though he's dead. And I have a tremendous amount of admiration for him and for the band Queen as a whole. And I just didn't feel that it was right. And so I didn't, I just left it there. But I remember seeing his piano and playing like one note on it, because I was like, I want to play like one note on the piano that Freddie Mercury played. At that time, I really didn't know anything. Today, if I did that, I would have played something, because I know a few things anyway. But it was a beautiful piano, and I remember going over to his stereo and thinking like, oh, what does Freddie Mercury listen to? And seeing that it wasn't very satisfying to me, because I didn't know what I was even looking at. But he had tapes. It wasn't even CDs. And by that time, you'd think Freddie Mercury would be like listening to CDs, but I think it was just somehow easier. And it wasn't like an elaborate, fancy stereo. It was kind of like a boombox type of thing that I think he was using in conjunction with playing the piano, like practicing and like having sort of like song ideas or something. But like one of them was some kind of opera something, maybe a female singer. Something else was like a classical thing. I just don't remember. But it was like, kind of like, in a way, what you would expect him to be listening to. It was not any kind of pop or rock that I recognized. The few tapes that I saw were like classical or opera. And that's about it. I was sad. I was sad that he died. And then when I was there, I was like, this is weird. And, the whole place had a sad and lonely vibe to it, and not just because he had just died. There was something lonely about the apartment itself. It felt like a bachelor pad type of vibe, like I said. I don't know if there's anything else I really want to say. Like, I don't know, but like I said, it was faster to use Google Earth on the desktop, or whatever, the web, instead of using the downloaded the program, But yeah, that little area is known as Sutton Place. In fact, let me see if I can find something here, because I remember something about the movie Manhattan by Woody Allen. I'm just remembering it. Let's see if I can find this little area. Yeah. This is it. So this is an area called Sutton Place, which is extremely swanky. It might not look like much, but like let me put it this way, if I had a whole bunch of money, I honestly, I don't think I'd live here. I'd probably live on the west side. But this would be one of the areas where I would be proud to have like a residence, Um, if you look at the cover for the movie, or the poster for the movie Manhattan with Woody Allen and Diane Keaton, you will see essentially this view. And what's missing is that I think there was a bench. A bench is a complicated word. You have to take about a minute to think of that word, right? So let me turn the wheels in my head. Oh, I remember, bench. Okay. But anyway, so I think there was a park bench like right over here, and the shot is of Diane Keaton and Woody Allen like looking across the East River, and that's whatever the fuck bridge that is. The Midtown Bridge. I think it's definitely not the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't think. I think it's the Midtown Queens Bridge. I grew up here. I should know what the name of it was. All I know is that this is a bridge that we did use. We never went across the Brooklyn Bridge. But let me see if I can... they're not letting you go down here. Really, this is a private... See, these people are kind of glaring. They're not really happy, I don't think, about the Google bus or van, recording them. This really is meant to be a private area. About 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, more like 15 years ago. Actually, I think it was longer ago than that. But I just wanted to hang out, and so I sat here alone for a minute, And I think there's a bench right there. I don't know why they call it a park. Is this a park? I guess if you're really, really stretching the definition. No dogs allowed. I say fuck you to that, but okay. No anything allowed anywhere. How about that? That would make the rich people happy, right? No dogs allowed, but put your garbage here. But anyway, so, this, and I think I know a guy from where I used to work who lives in Sutton Place. And I don't know how he makes his money, but I guess he's a lawyer or something, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so that's about all. Because I don't want to make this much longer. But, I have very fond memories of growing up in this area. And I really miss it. And, I'm trying to get back to New York City. And I know it's not the same anymore. And to be honest, the neighborhood that I grew up in, I'm not crazy about. The sort of Lenox Hill area. Because, like I said, it's just a little bit boring. If I were to have if I just had my choice of any place in New York City to live, it would be something like the Upper West Side type of thing. I forget I think it's called West End Avenue, if I'm remembering that correctly. I'm gonna let that be the last thing that I talk about. And I might be wrong. West End Avenue. I don't know what it's gonna do. Riverside Drive, West End. Yeah, that I was correct. Okay. West End Avenue. And this is 83rd. It would be somewhere in this area. Where am I going? This is the street, I think. Is this the avenue? This doesn't make sense to me. Okay. Oh yeah, no, this is the avenue. I think I'm kind of remembering Riverside Drive and thinking it was West End Avenue. But either way, I would be very happy to live here. Riverside Drive. There's park area here. I don't think it is it Central Park? I guess it is. But yeah, this is also a really nice area. I'm sorry if this was boring. I didn't mean it to be boring. But again, you can just speed up the sound. You can speed up the track. Speaking of boring, these people look bored. That's a really nice looking building. Yeah. Let's just say I'm rich tomorrow for some random reason. This is the building that I'm gonna live in. Whatever this, this twin set of buildings, whatever. With these fancy adornments. Clean air hybrid. Yeah. I'm glad you wrote that on there, because like now I know that you're not just a gas guzzling regular city bus. You're a clean air hybrid electric bus, Anyway, that's about all. Thanks for watching.